Secret life funded by drug money. That is the accusation leveled today against the Border Protection officer accused of taking bribes.
America, we just got the conviction that proves everything that we've been saying about border corruption. Leonard Darnell George, a U.S. Customs Border Protection officer at the San Diego-Mexico border, was just found guilty by a federal jury for taking upwards of $400,000 in bribes to let smugglers bring hundreds of pounds of methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl, and heroin into our country. But here's what's going to make your blood boil. This corrupt agent gave traffickers an hour window to reach his specific lane, waved through the vehicles loaded with drugs and people, and allowed at least 19 successful crossings over 8 months. We're talking about enough deadly drugs to kill thousands of Americans, all because one border agent sold out his country for cash.
A former Customs and Border Patrol officer was found guilty in federal court on bribery and drug charges. A jury found 41-year-old Leonard George guilty on 4 counts.
What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This conviction perfectly illustrates how border corruption directly enables the drug crisis that's killing over 100,000 Americans every single year. When a border agent can be bought, our entire national security is compromised. Let me break this down for you. Leonard Darnell George, a 41-year-old CBP officer working at the San Diego-Mexico border crossing, was just convicted on multiple federal charges, including bribery and conspiracy. From late 2021 to June 2022, this corrupt agent ran a systematic operation that allowed drug traffickers to flood American communities with deadly narcotics.
Prosecutors say that he took upwards of $400,000 in bribes and allowed smugglers to bring drugs and undocumented migrants through his inspection lane in the San Ysidro port of entry.
This port of entry was one of the busiest border crossings in the world, and it was compromised from the inside. Here's how George's criminal operation worked, and it shows just how sophisticated these corruption schemes have become. He would give drug traffickers a specific 1-hour window to reach his inspection lane at the border crossing. During that window, he would wave through vehicles loaded with drugs and people without conducting proper inspections. The payment structure was staggering. George received between $13,000 to $17,000 per vehicle that he allowed through. One instance, text messages show he received $68,000 for letting 4 vehicles pass through his lane in a single operation. Think about that. 19 times, vehicles loaded with deadly drugs and illegal immigrants passed through what should have been one of the most secure border checkpoints because a federal agent sold out his country for cash. What exactly was George allowing into our country? Hundreds of pounds of methamphetamine, the primary cargo in these smuggling operations. But that wasn't all. These vehicles also contained cocaine, fentanyl, and heroin, along with people being trafficked illegally into the United States. George worked with 2 separate criminal organizations, showing this wasn't a rogue smuggling ring. This was a systematic corruption of our border security by multiple criminal networks. The fact that he could coordinate with different organizations while maintaining his position as a federal agent shows how deep this corruption goes. The fentanyl and methamphetamine that George allowed through his lane likely killed Americans through overdoses. Every gram of fentanyl that crossed through his inspection lane had the potential to kill dozens of people. We're talking about a direct line from this corrupt agent's greed to American deaths from drug overdoses.
A secret life funded by drug money. That is the accusation leveled today against the Border Protection officer accused of taking bribes.
The federal prosecutor here in court today won her argument to have Leonard George held in jail without bail. The main reason is the judge considers him a flight risk because of his close ties to Tijuana.
Federal agents built their case against George through a combination of digital evidence and witness testimony that painted a clear picture of systematic corruption. They obtained text messages showing the payment arrangements between George and smuggling organizations. But what really sealed his fate was his own behavior after receiving the bribes. George used the money to buy vehicles, motorcycles, and jewelry. He also spent heavily at strip clubs in Tijuana, creating a paper trail that federal investigators could actually follow.
39 trips to Tijuana so far this year, all of them to this area known for partying and prostitution. Prosecutors say each time 41-year-old Leonard George visited a girlfriend at the Hong Kong Gentlemen's Club. He could afford it, prosecutors say, because of the large amounts of cash he earned by looking the other way as drug smugglers drove their payloads through the border into the U.S.
Witnesses testified about his suddenly lavish spending habits, behavior that was completely inconsistent with the CBP officer's salary. When a federal agent starts buying expensive vehicles and jewelry while spending heavily at strip clubs, it raises obvious questions about where the money is coming from. George's conviction exposes the fundamental vulnerability in our border security, the human element. You can build the highest walls, install the most advanced technology, and deploy thousands of agents, but if those agents can be corrupted, the entire system is compromised. This case demonstrates how criminal organizations specifically target and corrupt border personnel. They identify agents who might be susceptible to bribery, they offer substantial sums of money, and then they create systematic corruption that could operate for months or years without detection.
It's a booming multi-billion-dollar business along the border fueled by greed and guns. And some within the ranks of Customs and Border Protection and Border Patrol are willing to turn their backs on the U.S. by either turning a blind eye or ushering in whatever the cartel is pushing, all to get a piece of the pie.
This port of entry is one of the most heavily monitored and secured border crossings in the world. If corruption can happen there, it can happen anywhere along our border. This raises serious questions about how many other border agents might be compromised and how many other smuggling operations are currently active. George's operation ran for 8 months before being detected. During that time, he facilitated at least 19 successful crossings, allowing hundreds of pounds of deadly drugs and dozens of illegal immigrants into our country. The damage from those 8 months will continue to ripple through American communities for years to come. Leonard George now faces serious prison time for his crimes. This sends a clear message that border corruption will be prosecuted at the fullest extent of the law. But the real question is whether this conviction will deter other potential corrupt agents. The $400,000 that George received over 8 months represents serious money for somebody who's on a government salary. When criminal organizations can offer this kind of cash, there will always be agents who might be tempted. The conviction also highlights the need for better vetting and monitor for our border personnel. How did George's sudden wealth and lifestyle changes go unnoticed for so long?
55-year-old Hector Hernandez sentenced to 7 years and 3 months in prison today after admitting he took bribes to smuggle narcotics and people across the U.S.-Mexico border while on duty.
George's case isn't isolated. We've seen other border agents convicted of similar crimes, like Hector Hernandez, who was sentenced to over 7 years for taking bribes to smuggling narcotics and people across the border. This shows that border corruption is a systematic problem, not just individual bad actors. America, George's conviction proves what we've been saying all along. Border security isn't about walls and technology. It's about having trustworthy personnel who can't be bought by criminal organizations. When border agents sell out their country for cash, every American pays the price. Hundreds of pounds of methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl, and heroin that George allowed into the country have likely killed Americans through overdoses. The illegal immigrants that he waved through his lane are now somewhere in American communities, and we have no idea where they are or what their intentions might be. This case perfectly illustrates how border corruption directly contributes to America's drug epidemic. Every bribe taken represents American lives that will be lost to potential overdoses. The good news is that George will be facing serious prison time for his crimes. The bad news is he's probably not the only corrupt agent operating along our border. Criminal organizations have unlimited money to offer bribes, and there will always be an agent who might be tempted by that cash. This is why we need comprehensive immigration reform that includes not just physical barriers and technology, but also better vetting and monitoring and accountability for border personnel. The fight against border corruption is ultimately a fight for America's national security. When our borders can be compromised from within, every other security measure becomes meaningless. This case shows why border security requires both strong barriers and trustworthy personnel. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comments section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.